All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're breaking down the contents, the context, and the completely polarized reception of Vice President JD Vance's 2026 book, Communion: Finding My Way Back to Faith. Whether you've been following his political rise super closely, or you just remember all the buzz around his first book a decade ago, this new release has sparked an intense conversation across the entire cultural and political spectrum. We're going to be your guide through this complex text, looking strictly at what the book actually says and how the world has reacted to it.
To do that, here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover 1. The highly anticipated sequel, 2. A spiritual journey, 3. The political manifesto, 4. A divided critical reception, and 5. Eyeing the 2028 election. Let's get into it. Section 1. The highly anticipated sequel. Let's set the stage with the hard facts. Published by HarperCollins in June of 2026, this 304-page hardcover actually started out as a personal faith project way back in 2022. He set it aside, but now it's out in the world, and readers literally immediately noticed something very specific about how the book is put together.
Reviewers from places like The Spectator and Religion Unplugged, they completely agreed on one major thing. This is basically two entirely different books jammed under a single cover. You've got the first 175 pages, which read like a super personal spiritual memoir. But then, bam, hard pivot. The entire second half of the book morphs into this robust, heavy-hitting political manifesto. To really grasp what communion is all about, we've got to look at both of these halves.
Moving on to Section 2, A Spiritual Journey.
The first half compresses years of spiritual wandering into one pretty digestible storyline. Vance talks about growing up with the casual, unstructured Protestant faith of his beloved grandmother, Mama. But then, as he heads off to serve as a Marine in Iraq and later goes to Yale Law School, he actually describes himself as becoming this arrogant atheist. Just chasing elite status, wanting that professional approval. Well, thanks to some intellectual curiosity and mentors like billionaire Peter Thiel, he starts to push back hard against American hyper-consumerism. And this whole search for meaning, it ultimately leads to August 2019 when he's officially baptized into the Roman Catholic Church.
And tucked inside this spiritual narrative are some wildly revealing personal moments. Take, for instance, a really brief, somewhat frustrating meeting Vance had with Pope Francis in Rome. This was in April 2025, literally just a day before the Pope passed away. Reviewers were quick to point out that this scene perfectly captures the real-world tension between Vance's Catholic faith, which preaches strict care for migrants, and his day job in an administration known for mass deportation policies. It's just a striking moment of friction right there in the middle of his conversion story.
Okay, let's flip the script to Section 3, the political manifesto.
So that second half of the book, the core of his argument leans heavily on a political theology called post-liberalism, which is deeply rooted in Catholic social teaching. And this framework is fascinating because it doesn't fit neatly into your standard Democrat or Republican boxes. The main argument here is that the economy should serve families and human needs. It essentially demands that giant corporations stop treating everyday people like disposable cogs just to make a quick profit.
Vance is essentially going for this populist third way. Just look at who he's critiquing here. He calls out Democrats for putting absolute personal liberty above community cohesion, but then he turns right around and blasts traditional Republicans for worshiping the free market at the expense of the working class. He specifically condemns the reliance on illegal migrant labor, arguing that corporations just use it to keep wages artificially low. Plus, he sounds a massive alarm about dropping birth rates across the West. At the end of the day, he's trying to blend pro-family and pro-worker arguments into one major critique of modern secular global capitalism.
All right, that brings us to Section 4, a divided critical reception. To say the reaction to this book was split would be a massive understatement. On one side, secular and progressive critics were deeply frustrated. Slate's Molly Olmstead really hit the nail on the head for this camp, saying the first half was thoughtful, but that ideological shift halfway through turned it into a stiff and unimaginative political memoir. We saw the exact same kind of feedback from The New Yorker and The New Republic, too. They felt the second half was just a rigid, highly partisan justification for his policies, completely lacking the raw authenticity that made his first book, Hillbilly Elegy, such a massive hit.
But then, you look at traditionalist Catholic thinkers and conservative commentators, and it's like they read a completely different book. Writing for First Things, Bishop Robert Barron praised it highly. He saw it as the sincere, redemptive story of a guy who managed to escape the hollow, secular rat race for elite status to find true moral footing. For readers in this camp, seeing Vance apply Catholic social teaching directly to modern American politics isn't just refreshing, they see it as absolutely necessary. And this friction isn't just happening in fancy magazines. It's everywhere. Just look at the public reception.
you've got everyday readers completely dismissing the entire project as a sanitized PR stunt. For a lot of folks, watching Vance go from a vocal Trump critic to his actual vice president makes any claim of a sincere spiritual or political conversion pretty hard to swallow.
But right next to that, in direct contrast, you've got readers who genuinely resonated with Vance's journey. They're praising the book as a highly valuable read for any American who's trying to make sense of how faith, class, and modern policy all crash into each other today. The divide is just absolute.
Which leads us perfectly into our final section, Part 5, Eyeing the 2028 Election. Because when you zoom out from the text itself, reviewers across the entire political spectrum basically agree on one major thing. This book is absolutely laying the ideological groundwork for a potential 2028 presidential campaign to succeed Donald Trump. By dropping this book now, Vance is effectively writing the origin story for his current political worldview. It's a massive test to see if he can successfully merge MAGA loyalty with traditional Catholic social teaching. He's making this very direct pitch to working-class voters by going after corporate greed, while at the exact same time signaling to religious conservatives that, hey, we share the same cultural and spiritual values.
So after unpacking all of these wildly different perspectives, the deeply personal spiritual journey, the heavy-hitting political manifesto, the glowing praise, and the absolute outrage, we have to leave you with this one provocative question. As the vice president's public life continues to unfold, what are we really reading here? Is communion a genuine confession of a hard-won faith, or is it the carefully calculated opening pitch for the 2028 presidency? Maybe for a man in his position, it's literally impossible for it not to be a little bit of both. Thanks so much for joining us on this explainer, and keep questioning what you read.